I don't know. They reset something. Okay, y'all. Any quick questions on paradigm? Are we good?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, Southwest is good. Ridge. All right, let's do it, kids.
Okay. Order will be one off, and then maybe a little like firm block at the bottom. You know the deal. Okay. 7 minutes. Please slow me. Like my computer is really weird, so if I don't hear you, just like do it again or do it louder or like put it in the chat or something.
My computer completely crashed and is like just reloading. Give me one
can you give us like 30
second.
seconds? Sorry.
Like every
She just needs to rejoin the Zoom. All right, she's here now.
Okay. Okay. 7 minutes. Everyone good? Okay. Yep. Perfect. Okay. My time will begin now. Contention one is the door of the thesis, and one is that truth is only defined by perspective. A's relativism is reality. Everyone has their own view of events, even historical ones. Eyewitness testimonies, print confirmation bias numbers as to how many people killed or enslaved and uncertain. We can only hypothesize about how the dinosaurs died and whether the Big Bang is real. There is no such thing as certainty. B's subjectivity shapes truth finding. A study of bilingual Welsh English speakers found that what people perceive to be true in their first language, they find false in their second language because they experiences associated with words in each language shape the way that we process information. C's empiricism cannot resolve morality. Empirical questions can only answer what the world is right now, not what we ought to do. Analyzing material conditions under dialectical materialism, for example, doesn't prescribe action, just tells us the contradictions exist now. D is empiric analysis. Investigations of causality don't function. The butterfly effect illustrates that all actions have infinite consequences. It's impossible to determine the effects of one action because they simply not find increase, infinite regression, causal analysis. Little I is ivory tower, attempting to discern cause from effect reads endless investigation of causes that get nowhere and prevent true movement building. 2 is empiricism is the logic of Western violence, operating on the premise of Cartesian dualism as a distinction between the material world and the things that we think. A is that this is unreasonable. Anything we see is inherently affected by subjectivity. Even the way I see blue is probably different from the way you see blue. I know the word book it refers to paper with writing bound together, not because I have an inherent signifier, but because my worldview has been constructed through discursive engagement. B is this takes out empirical analysis of history absent the affirmative. Interpretation of historical events is rooted in understandings of empiricism, because while one historical action may be viewed as a success by some, it could just as easily be viewed as a failure by others, as proven by dichotomous opinions on Mao's dubious success. Contention 2 is the magnifying glass, or the harms. One is the idea that the United States exists is predicated on a history of colonial violence that systematically strips indigenous groups of power. The continued use of the centralized state power reifies the authority of these groups to continue to impose their violence on these indigenous groups. A is proven by the fact that the exact ban on microplastics from the EU was curtailed by gas lobbies and firms that made them exempt from enforcement or ratifying the flawed policy decisions of neoliberal actions is probably not very good. Second, that role playing as oppressors is independently violent. Being forced to defend one of the worst perpetuators of empiricism in existence as the United States federal government is independently violent by forcing oppressed groups to role play as oppressors to magnify their oppression. 3 is what counts as a microplastic. Something that's too small to impact a human could impact marine life. Banning microplastics begs the question of what perspective are we looking from, which lies on empirical analysis based on environmental or economic models. Contention 3 is the body or the impacts. Versus that colonial violence is reified by the imposition of singular truisms. The justification for the elimination of indigenous sovereignty is the inability to conform to Western productions of empiricism. A's logic allows Western imperialists to paint indigenous cultures as backward and undesirable, justifying colonialism, cultural assimilation. This corrupts revolution. Mao's attempt at colonizing Taiwan, only discouraged by the superior military force, illustrates that any theory that demands assimilation to an a priori truth will inevitably be exported in the form of colonial violence. 2 is ableism. Empiricism is rooted in the creation of taxonomy of people. The creation of statistical understandings of normal in terms of scientific terms led to the segregation of the abnormal and forms of disability. A's empiricism will always seek to classify people into categories of the normal and the abnormal, and thus justify eugenics and infinite violence against abnormal populations, as proven by the steady elimination of those with Down syndrome and Europe. B is the ethics creation of abject populations, meaning these people are always excluded from ethical utilitarian calculations. Fairness begs the question for whom, which is always impossible when populations are placed in a constant state of non-being. Third is dogmatism. Empiric faith, epistemic frames only enshrine dogmatic behaviors of poisons revolutionary energy by forcing people to simply accept the truth as it is. Empiric systems prevent questioning laws, methods, and leaders, which ultimately dooms revolutionary movement. A is cult of personality fails. Idolatry, the Hoxism movement created a devotion to the persons and a cause that allows for bourgeoisie infiltration to eventually collapse the revolution. Dogmatic revolutions kill revolutionary subjectivity, key to long-term solvency. The alternative, contention 4, is the meddling kids. Vote affirmative to reject truth and embrace differential consciousness to construct the apparatus of emancipation. Vote affirmative to reject truth and embrace the differential consciousness to construct the apparatus of emancipation. One is differential consciousness is the mobilizing power of the embrace of simultaneously existing and contrasting oppressed subjectivities as a kinetic force constantly demanding alienation, perversion, and reformation of both spectators and practitioners. The revolution doesn't stop. The differentially conscious subject refuses to be placated to small victories. Are constantly recognizing and re-evaluating their personal relative positionality and distinct webs of violence to reshape their methods of mutual aid and direct resistance. These levels of resistance, the simultaneous emphasis on multiple oppressed subjectivities creates the levels of resistance that are critical to revolutionary success. For example, the camaraderie focused on
Why?
indigenous mind women. Yeah.
Yeah, why is a ballot key then? Why would we like sort of propel this sort of oppressed subjectivity via voting affirmative?
Because you want to endorse our movement.
Okay. But like why does the ballot signify an endorsement of the movement?
Because the ballot is an endorsement of scholarship. We say that you should endorse our scholarship because you should endorse like the way we hypothesize or theorize about the world. Okay. Then we tell you, as well as educational improvements for my youth reflecting a movement with an emphasis on dual subjectivity, sees it prevents revisionism. Only an emphasis on differential consciousness ensures that movements autocorrect for revisionism because the basis of one's positionality within the structures of violence ensures that the forwarding the people means first. The eyes of Saul's collapse into revisionist politics is the collapse of Maoism into Dengism, the bureaucratic distancing of the subjectivities of the oppressed. 2 is that constructing the apparatus of emancipation is key, refers to the development of liberatory dual power to replace existing institutions who prioritize the needs of the people. The Bill's revolutionary love and mutual aid network is the foundation for anti-capitalist, anti-heteronormativity, decolonial movements. AIDS is a basis of practice that builds up Brazil's faveladas use dual combat against police violence and great patriarchy to allow them to have mutual aid societies to protect themselves. Contention 5 is a French code or the framework. 1 is the epistemic frames of truth shape material revolutions. A's positionality. Truth is constructed by relationship to neoliberalism and imperialism. Revolution is constituted in regards to what we believe its bounds are, which is why revolutionary women's movement in the 20th century solely realized legal equality without addressing the deep-rooted patriarchal and heteronormative structures of society. Liberation is framed by our definition of liberation. Because there's no such thing as root cause. Every event is a product of a confluence of factors and events. Ignoring the root causes, ignoring the roots of anti-blackness and feudal society or Western patriarchal domination of women as an exploitable subject prior to capitalism obscures structures of violence to operate independently and combine to amplify the impacts of oppressions. 2 is that debate enshrines empiricism. A is that clashes a lie. Debate is premised on the problem, the discovery of truth. Debate assumes, if not demands, that the truth can be revealed by the end of the round. This is fundamentally impossible to do, and partly with debaters basing their knowledge off of only 20 minutes of prep, merely understanding the resolution by the time they start the round. B is the correct knowledge. Procedurals that police this space demand that there is only one good form of correct knowledge, which inevitably recreates demands for empiricism, Western truth, obscuring the violence inherent to the space. C is that the question is proximality. Existing in the space of debate begs the question of why we're here. The F questions at the root are arguments for the inclusion of non-empirical methods of analysis analysis. So if you weigh it against the procedural, at worst it goes on the same layer. And D is a disempowered spectator. Empiricism-based debate teaches that there's only one line and that it isn't revolutionary. That debaters must adhere to status quo violence to fulfill the role of policymaker because there's no other way to change this. It's violent because it excludes other modes of change making at interpersonal levels and through community support. 3 is the role of the ballot to endorse the epistemic frame that best rejects empiricism. That will be put in the chat under view. Terms of the KVK debates are good. A couple warnings. One is that if you buy any of the AF and that empiricism is not true, the only way we come to know that within subjectivity develop moral paths is by combination, looking at the intertwining factors that create material conditions. Permutations are necessary to form better subjectivities. 2 method interaction is key to revolutionary success. Absent understanding of how different methods can be combined and applied, skills fall through and become exportable to construction. A is that understanding other people's subjectivity is critical to base building so you can convince them to join the movement. The Zapatistas use mediation between agrarian colonist farmers and indigenous Chiapas to achieve land reforms. B's class consciousness doesn't exist without understanding subjectivity. Rule farmers being Trump supported probably proves this. And 3rd is that the logic of the AF is the perm. The AF inherently demands that we reject singularity of empiricism or believe that there can only be one revolutionary AF. Taking away the perm is taking away the AF. Okay, vote AF.
Okay, cool. Hold on.
Give me 1 second, kids. I'm just going to give the other judges the texts because I'm the only one in here. Bear with me. And of course, it's not letting me copy paste, so
You can screenshot it.
valid. Okay, we're good.
Okay, cool. Order is 4 off case. Advantages in order, but briefly starting with framework. Everyone good?
Wait, hold on. You want a separate framework sheet? Or you just want 4 off the K and then the K?
No, it'll start with like their contention 5 framework stuff, and then their like framework about like truth being constituted by empiricism.
So the underview stuff and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it goes sorry, the off and then the AF framework and then the rest of the AF.
No, it's that framework, then the off,
Oh,
right?
No, it's offs in order, and then
Oh,
it's
okay.
framework.
Okay.
off, AF framework, the rest of the AF in order.
Mhm.
Okay, awesome.
All right. If everyone's good, we can start on my first word. The university is an educational hall of mirrors in which all forms of knowledge are diluted towards non-recognition. Education has become fundamentally bastardized into a weapon of hyper-real and stripped. Classrooms of education, students of learning, and teachers are all teaching all that remains is a rotting curse of knowledge where university once stood. Real is produced from memory banks and pure simulacrum. The first order things are connected to the meaning, and the second, their distance things are a mechanization, and the third things displaced by marketing, and the fourth things become virtual and self-referential. There's no longer a connection to the real. This progression offers us an opportunity to understand the condition of educational systems and industrial culture transformed, how the way we produce learners and learnings become dominated by the factory. We expect products of education to take on reproducible and manageable pieces. Learning has replaced them with a harmonic task force with obedience, and the school bell mirror the factories where individualized empowerment was replaced by this collective. The net effect was separation of signifiers, grades, and signified holistic experience and channeled into academic achievement. Reality has become deconstructed, and we must create a new model, and teachers must operate in a different model to fight the symbolic system and invent new kind of language to succeed. And the university is a dying institution that the left attempts to re-inject with the meaning under the pretense of democratic deliberation and participation is still possible. We should transform this death into a violent process by which we can inflict harm onto on it through mockery and defiance. That's Baudrillard. The university is in ruins, lacking substance or knowledge. The strike is recognized as the ordeal in the university. The fiction of ascension is no longer meaning. The fiction is dreams of primacy and democracy of knowledge. The left re-injects ideas of justice into a rotten apparatus that is coming undone. The left reproduces power and believes it receives precisely where the system it puts to an end. Power no longer believes in the university necessary to start with the very rotting, that to dream of resurrection and to transform this rotting system into violent death, mockery, and defiance through simulation, would offer the ritual of death in the university, a model of decomposition of society's students who wish to receive the lost object, confronting power and challenges the death of the institution that is not to challenge the university. I'll take it at the end. The educational institutions are use signifiers to determine the education of a person, and thus are standing in the world of the student is the image of the student is construction of specific images that have no value other than cultural capital. The construction of effectively embodies the productive experience of education as a good student. The one social reproduction of class takes precedence, and social cultural capital is infused with symbolic capital. The particulars of education and what anyone actually specifically learns are not actually desired outcomes. A good student is construction of a person that signifies the outcome of the desired as a whole. Point is not to train students to do anything specific. Institutions tend to advertise that their students learn in terms of generalizations and good writing and critical thinking, and academia, like Disney World, distills the world into a specific packages of meaning and forces unchallenged interpretations onto students' educational goals to evolve into the destruction of alternity and complexity. The meta-semiotic principles of the parallel those are organizing from Disney World put meanings out of their context and repackage them into bounding information packets, and their linkage of identity, politics, and trauma maintains affective structures that undergird all types of liberalism. Any sort of oppression politics or any call to this sort of educational value of the ballot is uniquely flawed. There failed radicalism that masks the effective responses to power. And radicalism might not be radical for the people who sit around discussing how to change things. People have to have experiences of personal liberation, and society remains untouched. In political terms, your personal liberation doesn't count for like anything. Young people are induced into subculture of good and giving sense of a personal liberation, but this personal liberation is a false hope. External critiques fail to produce meaningful change and allow capitalism of profit off of liberal movements through direct responses that foster its own growth. We won't destroy the system, but we will not destroy the system by revolution. Everything produced is by contradiction. Only will we feed back into the mechanism. It thrives on symbolic violence, and we must displace everything into the symbolic, where reversal and overbidding are the law, or an equal superior death, the impossibility of responding. Debaters are cartographers. They map war and impose a transparent transcript to all witnesses. Even just debates about oppression are still part of this cartography, but to circulate these images of war and to even invoke any sort of injustice like colonialism is to make war mean something. And that's precisely the problem, meaning the system devours itself. Images plead for meaning with some sort of reaction. The constitution of global violence are gorged with the meaning that's actually killing us. Thus, the alternative is an overinvestment in the forms of language, communication, and debate. Only a mimicry of the forms of the system can accelerate to the point of their to their vacuity. We must choose to fight where we are beaten before we even begin. Rejection emerges from within. Violence can be understood as insurrection against the global integrating system. Despite emulations of external threat, the most dangerous threat lies within loss of reality. The goal is integral reality. Everything is sort of realized without a sort of system, which means we need internal revolution. Thus, this debate ought to be a question of what form of education systems we should prioritize. One point is specificity. We are the university, which requires a paradigmatic analysis of the way we operate ethically responsible. And interrogation of space is a prior question, since all your arguments presume a neutral starting point. 2 point is education is the internal link to the rest of society. 8 point is prior question of engaging in the way of scholarship. And B point system is capital control society through manipulation of education. Next off is the counterplan. We affirm the entirety of the 1AC absent their decision to get the ballot. 1 point is work within white academia, which prevents any sort of revolution from within. But second, you ask for like sort of the approval of white judges, which is uniquely bad for anti-colonialist movement. But thirdly is bad for rupturing the entirety of the debate space. That's a net benefit. Is uniquely good. And the next off is going to be theory. Interpretation: the role of the ballot must specify 1, whether you endorse a policy, concept, or speech. 2, how to weigh impacts and resolve them under this framework. And 3, what positions the negative read could to engage with this argument they violate. 1 point is resolvability. Interps are key to forcing debaters to create a coherent, accessible framework. They justify saying random words and letting the judge intuit how to ballot. Coherence comes first. Debate is pointless if we don't know what we're debating. Yeah. I'll take your POI.
Can you explain the links to your K again? Just like label them, please.
Yeah, we were gonna do the links on the AF page, but there's few. First is the use of the ballot to sort of signify this to sort of endorse your movement. Second, we say the use of the academy to create any sort of movement building is uniquely bad because the academy is already bankrupt, and any sort of argumentation as to why the academy should be upheld is uniquely bad. We'll move on to theory. The B point is stasis. Interpretations the interp forces debaters to create a consistent framework throughout the round. They justify vague role of the ballot so they can shift in the AR and D-link arguments, which can constrain our offense and make fair engagement of topical education possible. Vote neg to uphold any sort of model debate that allows for challenging claims. There's going to be a few impacts to this. First is going to be self-questioning. The process of researching, thinking about, and reflecting on a topic prior to debating it changes minds, which means that any sort of without a predictable way of actually debating, we're not going to be having any sort of access to question your assumptions, which means you should vote negative on presumption because all affirmative claims should be presumed false unless you're able to test them. Second is debatability. The resolution mechanism is the only predictable stasis, which means that you should be able to have some sort of impact to the K and outline the impact, or else it's just going to be abstract theorization. Third is going to be tactics. Abstract theorization is useless outside of concrete strategies to implement them. Discussing the material of and political dimensions of the resolution is best to catalyze global radical movements. The overview here is that it's not about preserving the institution, but rather about having some sort of deliberative form in which we can actually engage with the 1AC. The engagement is a prior question to sort of changing ethics, and we say that means that all of their arguments should be presumed epistemologically bankrupt. We'll move on to the F. Starting with framework, the 1 point is that this extremely links to the sort of argument that any sort of change can be created by voting affirmative. First, we say that hope is uniquely bad for marginalized communities in the first place. Even if you buy that empiricism is bad, first we could say that even if empiricism is bad and the truth claims of the AF are true, the ballot is uniquely not the place to get this. But second, they make arguments as to why women are exploitable subject using capitalism. The first point is that that's why the system should implode in itself. That's the only way to sort of solve the sort of hierarchy, which means that we solve better. Then they make arguments as to why you exclude community sources. Then let's move on to this sort of like role of the ballot arguments. First, the role of the ballot doesn't make any sense insofar as the 1 point is that any sort of accommodation into the status quo of academia is never going to actually solve back for their impacts. But second, they say that permutations, they make arguments as to why understanding other subjects is better. But we're going to say that's epistemologically bankrupt. There's no way to actually do so insofar as you say that there's no way for people to be able to verify identities or any sort of arguments. Then they make arguments on the logic of the affirmative. But we say that we're not even gonna. We're gonna say that first, you can't perm the K because the 1 point is that the K is fundamentally exclusive from the affirmative, and the perm is literally the opposite of the F. We don't endorse the use of academia. Moving on to the thesis. First, they make arguments as to why truth is only defined by perspective and there's no such thing as certainty. We agree, but we would say that there's no reason as to why we would say that there's no reason as to why we can't verify our truth with other people.
Okay.
Wait, we sent the wrong text of the shell in the chat.
Okay, yeah. Tell me what I need to cut and paste over to the other judges. Or
Okay.
rather, you know what? Hang on. Just type the word here. Hang on. There. Now punch in all the correct things after what I just posted. There's like a gap now.
Did you guys have a roll of the ballot?
Hold on. Let them finish posting and then you can do any verification you need.
Wait, sorry, did you guys have a roll of the ballot?
My lord. Hang on, young one. Just 1 second. Okay, Ridge, is there anything else to cut and paste now?
Yeah, sorry, give us 1 second. We're not in the Zoom chat. Okay, that's everything.
Okay, now MVLA, what do you need?
Did you guys have a roll of the ballot?
The stuff we put in the chat is functionally a roll of the ballot. It's just what this debate ought to be.
Okay, give us a sec to paste it then. All right. So I'll be going the overview, the affirmative in order. Yeah, in the order. Let's see. Yeah, just in the order that was read.
Sorry, one more time.
Yeah, so the overview, the affirmative in order, the neg K pop down, and then there. Okay, I'm not exactly. Okay, let's see. Yeah, the neg K pop down,
Down is
and
incredible
then
right now.
yeah. Oh, is it? Do you guys hear me right now?
Yeah.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay.
I'm just muttering to myself. Go on.
Okay. All right, the K top down, and then their like roll of the ballot actually the roll of the ballot arguments first, and then their K top down,
All right,
and then
youngin, if you want to break up flows, because there are 6 of them now, you
Yeah.
need you need to be very precise as to which argument you want us to organize off of. Otherwise, we're going to start flowing straight down.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so the K top down, and then I'll go their K. Then at the bottom, their whole like the whole thing they pasted about the debate ought to be a question of education institutions.
Okay.
Counter plan, and then I think they read a theory show about the role of the ballot. So
Yeah, of course.
that
1 second, youngin. Hold on. Ash just got questions.
Where do you want me to put the neg links, like use of the ballot and use of academy, and where do you want me to put the terms sheet?
the links will just be under their framework.
Or like under their K?
Yeah,
Like,
just
I don't
under the
know.
K. We kind of float it in the K, even though it was read outside of it.
I flowed the K straight down and I put the links on the bottom of the K also. I just went back to that sheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Repeat and then framework spec or roll the ballot spec.
Mm-hmm.
And then sorry, the perm sheet goes where?
The perm sheet is just going to be, I guess it'll be on the alts.
So
They're alt.
they're alt.
So the neg K. Okay.
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 1 sec. Let me just.
We got to get this sorted, y'all.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So it is on the neg alt, right?
Yeah. It's on illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Ridge is good whenever.
I hope so.
Hold on.
Stand by.
I am absolutely like. All right. Let's do this.
And just to be clear, this is where the AF preamp perms go as well on the neg alt.
Yes. I'll just extend those on there probably.
We have the AF in order, the neg in order, then before the links, we have the perm sheet, then we have the neg links, then we have the CP, then we have roll the ballot spec.
Wait, can you repeat that again? I'm not.
This is what y'all do when you create 19 sheet flows.
Let me repeat that. Okay, so for the overview, the K top down, our K top down. and
Okay,
then-
hold on, start over. Hold
Okay,
on.
and-
Chanel has all their flows and a very tidy table.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Here's Asha. You can see their reactions
Okay,
to
I
what you
have
do
it
now.
all. It's all in order, I think.
Say it one more time.
Overview. We have the app in order.
Yeah.
Then we have the neg in order, but on the alt sheet, I've put the perm sheet with the app preempts and the neg answers. Then we have the neg links. Then we have the CP, and then we have roll the ballot spec.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Right. Just so we're clear, it's like a 90% risk I'm flowing straight down, but it's okay. Just go ahead. Just go. Just go.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So time begins. Truth is defined by perspective. Extended, there's no universal truth because subjectivity shapes truth finding. The discursive conversations we're exposed to inherently shapes what we think we know. Without resolving empiricism, the impacts of colonial violence and infinite violence will only continue. And the fact is that we won't even know what the academy, we can't even resolve the academy because what is the academy? We can't determine what the academy is without first evaluating what truth is. Rejecting truth and empiricism by embracing differential consciousness to construct the apparatuses of emancipation, i.e. by embracing existing and contrasting oppressed subjectivities is the only way and the conceded way to create sustained revolution for differentially conscious people to build mutual aid and to find true emancipation. But let's go into our framework. They massively drop a lot of our top level arguments about specifically why empiricism is simply false. We tell you that subjectivity shapes truth finding. Extend the study of most English speakers that the Rowan goes conceded. But secondly, we tell you that empiricism can't resolve morality, which means that we like analyzing material conditions under like empirical questions can only answer what the world is now, not what we ought to do, which means that even if you like evaluate reevaluate education, doesn't mean that you can prescribe what we ought to do. Secondly, we tell you that there's the ivory tower argument. We tell you that turning to discern cause from effect creates an endless investigation to causes that gets nowhere and prevents true movement building, which in other words, like evaluating empiricism is the first way to like evaluate truth. And furthermore, like our entire framework probably proves to you like that we aren't inducing academia, given that we're literally critiquing the academia's like whole basis of saying that okay, academia like basically says okay, we have the truth, here it is, right? They are founded based probably on empirical analysis of history that we pretty much yeah.
Wait, you say we lead to sort of ivory tower theorizing, but insofar as you're the one advocating for institutional change or any sort of change or progress using the ballot and using the debate space, which is already highly exclusive, how are you not the perfect example of ivory tower theorizing that's inaccessible?
Just because we're using the debate space does not make us an ivory tower, first of all. But second of all, we'd argue that we're at like forwarding clearly material movements that center oppressed voices, which is pretty clearly going to have out of the round implications. And we're specifically centering their subjectivities, which means we don't go back looking for all the like, I don't know, Homo Baudrillard confluence of impacts. What's a signal? What's not? Who knows?
Okay. Let's go into the harms. They have considered arguments about colonial violence that probably underlie all of their arguments about why academia is specifically bad, given the fact that academia was probably stemmed from like the United States like desire to like reinforce intellectual hegemony. Furthermore, we tell you that role playing as a precious is uniquely bad probably also means that we exactly just don't link to the K, because we're literally saying we should not follow academia and we should not be endorsing scholarship. Let's go into the also, secondly, we want you to extend the ethics argument. We tell you that like the creation of adjunct populations mean that these people are always excluded from ethical utilitarian calculations. To mean that their arguments about like any sort of fairness is probably uneducatable until you resolve the critique. What else do you want me to? Okay. Let's go into the alt. Extend the entirety of the alt. We tell you we should move further to reject truth and embrace differential consciousness. Our solvency goes completely conceded. We say that this is going to solve because we tell you that in this world, revolution doesn't stop because the differentially conscious students will be refused to be placated with small victories, i.e. being like subdued by academia or what academia tells them is right or what academia tells them to do. This probably solves like the impacts and solves like any sort of collapse back into revisionist politics, which is probably going to be key for praxis. Okay, down to the framework. What do you want me to extend here? I extend the entirety of the framework to tell you that okay, we're accommodating into academia, but they fundamentally don't understand that like academia is founded on empiricism, which is exactly what we're trying to critique, and like which probably means that you should just extend the entirety of our framework, and means that like RK is going to outlayer them. So let's go to their
Because
argument.
they've conceded movement building is impossible without the definition of revolution.
Yeah, and
which
they
is-
have and they've considered the fact that movement building is impossible without the definition of a revolution, which means that you have to like vote the K first. Okay, on the affirmative. Sorry, negation. Overview here is that you probably can't evaluate the entirety of the negation at the point where they have conceded the truth doesn't exist absent the affirmative. Their entire argument is a massive railing to the idea of that education at academia is bad, given the fact that they probably cite Baudrillard multiple times, which is all widely considered the hallmark of postmodernist academia for the point of like academia, and they literally Then the what's railing? Railing is okay, that's fine. This means that at the end of the day, if both of us are endorsing academia, that's probably still a wash, which means that you still default to the F. Let's go on to, okay, first let's go into their links. They read this link about how we use the ballot, which is why we are bad. Okay, let me just go a couple 3 link terms first. Number 1 is that they relink or just classify my argument there. Secondly, we tell you that we advocate for material movements outside of debate that ruptures anything else. Which probably means that like even if we utilize the debate space, that doesn't mean that we are like necessarily endorsing academia. But secondly, thirdly, we tell you that revolutionary scholars come out of academic enclaves like the uncommons, like for Milton and Harney, which probably means that
Okay, just move on.
yeah, okay. What do we need to turn?
Yeah, read that.
And thirdly, we tell you that they tell you that okay, false hope is bad, but turn we give personal liberation. That is the thesis of our alternative. Okay, let's go into the
Just ignore that.
just go into their whole chunk about why debate ought to be approached in the form of education institutions. 2 responses here. Number 1 is that we're not the university. We're sitting in Michelle's room. Secondly, if the university was co-opting this, we wouldn't be reading critiques of them every single day to funnel into truth movements. And secondly, empiricism comes first for a couple of reasons. A, it creates personal biases that determine what education we seek out in the first place. B is that education, even if it's not formal, is everywhere, which means that everything we discuss is a method of education too. C is that if you buy that education is how you solve everything, then a vote for the side with solvency, which is us. Let's go into the alternative. 2 big relinks here. Number 1 is that investment in language ignores that our language is skewed by the academy, which probably means that the investment of these probably relinks into like all of the harms into why the academy is bad. But secondly, if they tell you that debate is a university, that's basically their whole link. Then investment in debate is the largest relink in existence. Participation in this space is probably the largest relink. Third argument is going to be there's 3 arguments about no solvency. Firstly, is that using language without evaluating personal biases and subjectivities under empiricism analysis means like under empiricism analysis falls through because extend the Welsh English study that tells you that like if we just look at language, you probably just sit here and do nothing. But secondly, debate doesn't have the capacity to solve anything. We have 20 minutes of prep topical stuff does absolutely nothing. 3 is that extend that absent differential consciousness, they can't actually center oppressed politics, which collapses back into revisionism and probably reinforces the academia that they so hate. Let's go into the counter plan. Oh, also, like, actually, just kidding. I need to read the perm. Okay. Firstly, I want you to extend all of our perm blocks as to why, like, specifically, we will argue that we probably perm, like, both.
Perms, you buy the app, you buy the perm. Just extend that. Go, move on.
Okay, yeah, just extend that works. Okay,
UI.
yeah.
Is the
I'll
root
take it after this. Oh, sorry, I'll take it after the end. I don't have time. Let's go to the counter plan. Okay, on the counter plan, fine. Vote for us absent the ballot because they don't want the ballot either. Probably means that you should just default us. They also say that they prevent any revolution from within. This is not true. This doesn't solve because wait, what? Okay, vote for 3 reasons. Number 1 is an endorsement of a movement, which is the only way we can build. Secondly, if you buy any of the fairness impacts, you buy that the neg like is cheating by taking our advocacy. Neg is cheating by taking our advocacy, which kills clash and fairness. Thirdly, cheating is bad for intellectual production, means that no one bothers to ground the movements in understanding literature. And they tell you, they reach your presumption trigger, just presume F because they read a variety of counterplans. And the fact that there is clash in the debate probably proves that there can be significant clash on non-resolution analysis. And the counter interpretation is that the role of ballot must specify whatever those conditions are if asked. And these standards are counter standards can be infinite regression.
All right, so the order is going to be
Hold on 1 second. We just gotta color code some flows. Yeah. Anyway, one moment. Okay, we are unmuted. Judges, what information do you need?
I need a minute.
You need a minute? All right, 1 second. 1 second. We need to get our shells or our not our shells, our page organized. Here you go.
You're planning to kick something and you know right now. Do you mind telling us so I can? Are you?
In theory.
Huh?
Did you say kicking theory?
Yep.
Okay, paper airplane at Esha.
I don't know where it is. Oh, here it is. Gone. Yeah.
All right. Is there any other sheet we can eject?
Oh, wait, sorry, we're not.
So theory, we're not like kicking it, kicking cross apps. So like the sheet.
We both love and hate all of you right now. Okay. All right. What pages are you getting rid of? Are you getting rid of anything?
No.
No.
Great.
Okay, cool. All right.
Okay.
What's the order?
Okay, the order is our K, then CP, and then their framework.
Yeah.
One second.
Is your K also in the order of framework, impacts? I pulled those together. Alt, perms, links.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what was the order again?
Wait, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, sure. So
Okay.
the whole order is okay, the whole order is the K, then the CP, and then
AF.
their like the AF framework.
Wait, to
And
it's your K, not our K, right?
Can we just say the F and the neg?
yeah. Yeah. So neg, CP, AF,
Okay.
and the order of the K is
So where's theory going?
Where's theory going?
Theory is going on the app sheet. It'll just be like solvency deficit arguments.
Okay.
Cool.
This is why I don't flow on paper anymore, kids.
I
Okay.
think I would be having a terrible time if I was on a spreadsheet right now.
Yeah.
Just flow straight down. All right, here we go.
okay. All right, 8 minutes will start. Now, the university is an educational hall of mirrors in which all forms of knowledge are diluted towards non-recognition. Education has been fundamentally bastardized into a weapon of the hyper-real and has stripped classrooms of education, students of learning, and teachers of teaching. All that remains is a rotting carcass of knowledge where the university once stood, but the university is on the brink of collapsing via accelerating semiotic images and lack of meaning. Thus, the only an overinvestment in the system will allow us to accelerate its collapse, and that's good because the university's performative at best can never create any tangible change. Using the university and academy as to create tangible change is futile and self-serving individual movements towards mitigating oppression or self-fulfilling claims that create false hope for marginalized identities that re-entrench violent hierarchies. Okay, starting with the link turns. They say that they advocate for material change out of debate, but they're extremely performative and they can't actually reject empiricism. They say that they don't endorse the debate space, but you also don't allow for the system to collapse. The argument is that the system is on the brink of collapse, so we must overinvest in it in order to actually we need to overinvest in order to actually have change, so it can collapse fully, so it can collapse using natural
It's
like. So it can collapse using its natural course. Then they say that revolutionaries come out of what?
You what?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, so considering that education is run off like people investing into education, like if you like write a bunch of educational articles, the education industry is probably going to be like funded and happy. Like, why do you think an overinvestment in education is going to like do anything to collapse it?
Right, because you concede our uniqueness claims that the education system is already falling because of like increased semiotization and like more signs and images, which means that like right now the education system holds no meaning, but you reverse that uniqueness by like not over investing in the system, by, for example, not being topical and by trying to create actual change in the debate space.
Okay. Then they tell us that revolutionaries come out of academic enclaves, but we say that this again proves the performativity. None of these revolutionaries like actually happen. We say that if that was true, then the system would have already collapsed, which means that these revolutionaries are like fake revolutionaries. We tell you all of this is self-serving and futile. Then they can see that academia is colonialist and that empiricism is bad. We agree, but the ballot is a form of empiricism. They say that what?
Just like white.
They
like,
literally use like white people
to validate
like their arguments. Okay, then they tell us that they say that we link, but we don't for a few reasons. First of all, they say that we don't link because we tell you that we're actually leading to like the implosion of the system itself, which means that we don't link at all because you're like completely dismantling the system. We don't link it to any of this. Then they again on revolutionary scholars, we tell you this literally proves themselves. Like this is literally a reason to vote for us because we say that like this shows that all these revolutionary scholars are like
Have
futile
done
and they're
nothing, or
self-serving.
they
They've
concede
literally
the
done
uniqueness
nothing.
claim, but the
They've
system is
yeah, the
collapsed.
system is already collapsing. If those revolutionaries work, then the system would be collapsed. Then they tell us that we have false hope and that we give personal liberation, but no, you don't. It's just false hope. The main argument is that they concede the root cause of empiricism is the university. That means that the root cause of all this empiricism, that's the reason why we don't we're not able to see outside of these spaces. This the root cause is the university, and the only way to fix that is through overinvestment. Then they misunderstand our argument. We said that you have to overinvest in the system by playing the game of the system until the system collapses. They concede that the end is near, but they're not being topical, which is why you should cross-play the things from the theory sheet. We tell you that they concede that the end is near, but by not being topical, they don't overinvest in the system, which means the only way to vote is through alternative, which is key. Okay. Line by line on. They concede our root cause claims that semiotization of academia, which is infiltrated with signs and images, is exactly that. Then on this. Yeah, okay, extend the alternative, that the alternative is an overinvestment in the forms of language, communication, and debate. Only mimicry of the forms of the system can accelerate them to the point of their to the point of anything. Okay, now okay, let's look at their responses. So first, they concede that truth doesn't exist absent the app. We tell you that they tell us that truth doesn't exist absent the app, but we tell you that truth can still be verified by other people. You don't need the academy. We say that we don't need to endorse academia. Truth can still be verified by other people. Then they tell us that we already responded to those link issues. They tell us that they're not the university, but we say they endorse the university. They're using the ballot, which is the university, to endorse all of their ideologies, which means they are the university. But then we tell you that the university is already collapsing. But if they don't play the game of the university, then the university can't invest in itself. So we tell you that they have to try to if they try to have a revolution, then the university will continue to be upheld. We tell you the only way to do this is through reinvestment. Okay, on to the CP. You should extend the CP, which is that we affirm the entirety of the 1AC absent their decision to get the ballot. Okay, absent their decision to get the ballot, they tell you that the neg is cheating by taking out advocacy. This is literally not true. We tell you that we're not doing, because we reject the idea that they're using the ballot as they're endorsing academia to get to the ballot. But yeah, we're not okay. Actually, we're not going for this. CP.
We're not going for the counter.
We're not going for the counter plan. Okay. Now on to the F. Starting with a framework about how truth is constituted by empiricism, you should extend that we need to overinvest in the system by playing the game, but they don't, because they're not topical. But then second of all, we tell you that the ballot isn't the place to get this. This goes conceded. We tell you that the only way to get you shouldn't be using the ballot to do these types of things. But then they tell you that we need to understand the resolution, and that etc., and that truth can be revealed by the end of the round. But we tell you that no, because you're still not investing, you're not going to actually result in truth, since you're still endorsing academia through debate, which means that this system only needs to implode on itself, otherwise we can't see any of these truths. But then they tell us that on the role of the ballot, they tell you that we tell you that any accommodation of the status quo into academia will never solve back. They give you this ivory tower argument about endless investigation. We have several responses to ivory tower. First of all, ivory tower theorizing only happens in debate, which is why it exists. But we take away the system as a whole, which means we take away ivory tower. But the second response is going to be that ivory tower is worse, because in their world, because you're creating pseudo change. In their world, you're creating pseudo change by people thinking that they're actually changing anything. But that's worse, because you don't actually change the academy as itself. Again, you should crossplay alternative here. But then the third response to ivory tower is going to be that the debate space is already highly exclusive. The debate space is a bunch of rich kids from New Jersey and California debating. We tell you that it's super performative, but the only way to actually change this is to disrupt the entire institution, which means you implode the academia institution. But then they tell us that academia is formed on empiricism, using statistics. But we tell you
the university is.
But we tell you the university is the root cause of this empiricism, which means that absent the AF, you don't have any of this. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
extend the presumption claims on theory now.
Okay, top level presumption. Presumption is absent. Wait, what is that? Presume opposition, absent rigorous testing. They concede the testing is key. Will extend a resolvability. The interpretation is key to force debaters to create a coherent, accessible framework. They justify saying random words and letting the judge intuit how it operates on the ballot. Coherence comes first. Debate is pointless if we don't know what we're debating or why it matters. The B point is going to be stasis. Interpretation forces debaters to create a consistent framework throughout the round. They justify vague role of the ballot so they can shift in the AR to delay neg arguments to constrain or offense, which makes fair engagement and topic education impossible. But thirdly, we'll extrapolate this to overinvesting in the system. You can't overinvest in the system if you violate fairness claims. The only way to actually overinvest in the system is in the first place is for both debaters to be on a level playing field. Thus we can actually validate fairness claims, and thus you can then overinvest in the system. They say that we have to ask, but our argument is that even if we didn't ask, it means that we couldn't test the app, which is key. It's not our burden, it's yours, because you should want your arguments to be tested so we can validate that it's true. And second of all, they say that we read other arguments, but our argument is that we couldn't make case level responses because you weren't topical, which means that we had to we couldn't like test the AF. We couldn't test the AF because you weren't topical, which means that like we weren't on an equal playing field since the AF can read like literally whatever they want, especially since it's KF, which means that we can
Testing
never
is
test
key
it.
and-
Testing is super key because that's the only way the judge can actually vote for like the better debater or the better case, which means you should drop the debater. It's the only way to deter future abuse. We say that we read other arguments like the CP, but our argument is that we couldn't make any case level responses because we couldn't test the AF. They violated the shell, so drop the debater.
Okay.
Okay.
Order,
Sorry?
yeah. Order is just gonna be the AF and the K together, just like a weighing and interaction between like the link analysis and the impacts, and then the shell.
That sounds like a new sheet to us. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's like a weighing sheet.
So new sheet,
Yes.
new sheet.
I guess you could flow it on the framework level.
I'm gonna flow it on a whiteboard at this rate. All right.
Echoing.
Okay. Are you ready, Asha?
Oh yeah, I am.
Are you ready, Nish?
Yes.
Okay, we are ready.
Okay, yeah, cool. First, extend the thesis of the critique the university is an educational hall of mirrors. The argument here is that the university is on the brink of the collapse via accelerating semiotic images. They concede our uniqueness claims that right now the university is on the brink of collapse, which is uniquely good because we say that's the root cause of oppression. They tell you empiricism is bad, but they concede our root cause claims, which are really important because we tell you that the university is one, in charge of proliferating this empiricism across the world, but second, it's the fact that it's the one that justifies these sort of scientific theories like social Darwinism. It is the root cause of colonialism and oppression. We justify in our minds like things like oppression because we use the university as an empirical stasis point. The problem is that even if you reject empiricism, universities still exist, which means it'll continually create and propagate up regardless of your rejection of empiricism in this one particular round. The only an overinvestment in the system will allow us to accelerate the collapse. We say that overinvesting is good because it's already on the trajectory to collapse. This means that you have to A, be topical, but B, not use it valid for your potential gain. The problem is that if you don't overinvest in the system and there's some and if you don't overinvest in the system, there's going to be no way that the system can collapse, and you're going to reverse the trajectory by creating false hope. False hope is going to be uniquely bad for marginalized communities because all of our arguments are centered around how hope does not create tangible change. Their only example of the sort of tangible change that they're going to create is like revolutionaries that come out of academic enclaves. But the one point is that this is already co-opted by the system. We say that none of this revolutionary change has created anything, and if that's true, then it disproves your own uniqueness claim that colonialism is really bad right now, and the academy is really bad right now because we say that any sort of change has not created tangible change. But really, it's just a way for us to console ourselves into thinking that we're actually creating any sort of like tangible change that's going to be uniquely bad for a few reasons. One, extend the impacts of false hope. We would say that right now we would take away, or the university is already taking away hope for minorities and marginalized communities, but the app creates this sort of sense of false hope without providing any sort of solvency. They concede that using the ballot is just an appeal to the white colonizer, which is going to be uniquely bad because it means that you're appealing and you're playing the same system that is already oppressing like marginalized communities. The ballot will never do anything. If the app is true, then they don't need the ballot to create tangible change. All they have to do is say the app and have multiple people listen to it, which means that they could just have like some sort of storytelling scenario. There's no reason why the ballot is key. And insofar as that's true, that's already a claim as to why you should be very comfortable voting opposition. But the second argument is going to be the impacts of the K. We would say that this turns case for a few reasons. The one point is that the only way that you can have revolutionary changes via having the system overinvest itself and implode. The problem is that you can't use existing hierarchies to sort of solve back for like empiricism or any sort of structural violence claims because there's no way for the system in the status quo to do anything. Rather, yeah, there's no way for the system in the status quo to do anything. We'll use their own example about how revolutionaries come out of academic enclaves insofar as they don't give you any single impact to this, and their uniqueness claims talk about how academia is currently marginalizing other communities. That's our reason as to why like any sort of performance is bad. But secondly, we say that the claim, the quote from the last Gov speech is literally, we advocate for material change outside of debate. This is uniquely this means you can uniquely extend our arguments about false hope because we say that there's no way for you to have any sort of personal liberation. Empiricism is a sort of structural issue, and you don't get personal liberation through one form of empiricism. This means that you not only give false hope, but you overinvest in the system. That's going to be really bad because we are both sides agree that the current system is uniquely bad. We'll do some sort of we'll do the link extension, we'll do the line by line extension. We'll extend the argument that we are not ivory tower theorizing. You should also extend the arguments that like ivory tower theorizing is the ability to create abstract change using things like debate. We are criticizing your ivory tower theorizing. They also concede the root cause claims that semiotization of academia is what is infiltrating signs and images, which is exactly why the educational system has no meaning. We'll move on to the shell for like a few seconds. You should extend the shell not because fairness matters, but because testing is uniquely key. That means that there's a reason why you should be presuming opposition insofar as they concede our testing claims. We said that even if we should have asked, we would say first, it's not our burden, but second, even if we should have, the argument is that absent any sort of testing, we claim that we have not tested the affirmative to the fullest degree, and that absent testing means that you should be very comfortable presuming opposition. It's not our burden to ask you for claims. We would say that it's your burden because you should want to be tested. Absent that is just self-fulfilling prophecies. You're just using the ballot for your own selfish gain, which means that that is another reason as to why not only are you performative, but you do absolutely nothing to create change.
Okay. All right, Kira, what's happening now?
Oh, this is gonna be fun. Okay, actually,
Are
I think
you certain?
okay,
Because
it'll be.
you let us down.
I'm sorry, it's not gonna be fun. I lied. That was the false hope my neg was talking about.
Right. Okay, but what's the order?
So the order is going to be overview, like arguments, and then I'll do some layering, then the AF, and then it's going to be the neg K, and then I'll do a little bit of the theory offense, and then weighing at the end.
All right, Kira, we're all just gonna be really honest with you. We have been at New Sheet for a hot minute.
That's okay.
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
So
All right.
okay. Are you ready, Nish?
Yes.
Are you ready? All right. I suppose I'm ready. All right, let's do it.
5 minutes, my time will start now. Judges, it's a pretty clear AF ballot at the point where they've conceded 2 thesis level arguments. 1, truth is only subjective, which means an a priori truth does not exist. And second, that root causes do not exist. Now, what is the implication of these 2 arguments? We tell you this is a meta level claim that basically ends all of their offense. Why? In order to vote for their K, you have to believe that it is a priori true, i.e. it is a priori true that the university is going to collapse, that people are suddenly like absolutely need to invest in order to accelerate this collapse, that we are like bad because we do not invest in this collapse. All of these require a priori truth arguments. But we tell you that a priori truth does not exist per the entirety of our conceded framework because different people view different experiences differently. If they come up here and tell you that there's like a university is going to collapse, well, I could meet another person on the street that's like the university is perfectly fine. At the point where a priori truth doesn't exist, you cannot vote for a truth that is not real, Judge, which means you cannot defer to any of their arguments. But even if a priori truth does exist, per our conceded impacts, it is violent to affirm an a priori truth because it leads to colonial exploitation that only leads to an implication of this like constant reifying of these colonial authorities in order to export their politics, which is the entire logic of the academy in the first place, as my opponents concede, which is probably going to be pretty damning for not only their solvency, but also means that like they don't do anything. That probably means it's a pretty clear off ballot, but if you don't want to do that, let's first do some layering. They drop 3 warrants why empiricism comes first. First, empiricism creates personal biases that determine what education we seek out in the first place, which means that we probably like alter how the academy functions in relation to the person, which means you have to evaluate your empirical analysis first. Second, they've conceded that education is not formal, meaning that education exists all around you. For example, me sitting in like this room, I looked at this like pineapple lamp and I was like, oh cool, that's what a pineapple lamp can look like. I learned something, but I didn't have to be sitting in a classroom, which probably indicates that like this education can exist in the whole world. They've conceded this, and this also guts the root cause claim, because if you can find education anywhere, then the university isn't the only production of empiricism, which is the entire logic of the affirmative. Third is we tell you that empiricism says that root causes don't even exist in the first place because everything is a confluence of factors, which they have probably pretty cleanly dropped, which means that you don't value the root cause arguments. And fourth, they've conceded our role of the ballot. Judge, at the point where they've conceded mechanisms of empiricism exist outside of education, and we need to evaluate empiricism because that's the entire role of the ballot, you're probably going to be granting us the most solvency on the thing that you're placing your ballot on, which is empiricism. With that, let's go to the F. We tell you we're winning empiricism for a couple of reasons. First, you can extend the entirety of our solvency, which has gone dropped throughout this round. They like essentially only read presumption triggers here, but they haven't actually argued why this triggers presumption to the point where there's like huge amounts of floating offense in this round. But we tell you that we probably solve for a significant amount of reasons. But second of all, you can extend our warrants. They say we don't solve because these revolutions have never succeeded. Please tell that the Brazil's faveladas are the Mayan women who have successfully achieved reforms in the past, which probably indicates that we are able to solve. We have historical analysis of solvency, and this is probably going to be only influenced in the future by
We can pause time. The argument about like the revolutionaries in Brazil is brand new, and we say it shouldn't be evaluated.
Like they're brand new examples.
It's definitely not. These are the examples of the AF that we've read and like brought throughout the round. Like,
Okay, hold on. Do you have any interest in ruling on this?
No.
Do you have any interest in ruling on this? It is a panel.
there you go. Fair enough. Slay. Okay. I'm at like 3 minutes. Okay. I'll continue my time now. You extend that we solve empiricism because they don't really contest it on their K. They are a rolling bundle of contradictions and drop the relinks. It's a pretty clear AF ballot for 3 reasons. First, their links are symmetric. The thesis of their links are that we use education, the AF uses education, but not enough to collapse the education system. Great. Well, the perm solves and shields the links to the disad, which probably means that there's no reason why you wouldn't just do the perm and do the AF and then the neg, which probably solves the entirety of the K. But even like independently, you probably don't want to vote there. But second of all, they don't have any links left. It's just a weird in between, like you do debate, but not enough debate argument, and the ballot argument. But they dropped Michelle's 3 ballot responses that say that the ballot is key. Otherwise, you have ideological fracturing. It's the only way the AF succeeds, and they essentially concede that the ballot being given is probably a good thing. They don't extend ballot links, which probably means you don't vote there. They also which means they probably don't have any links or why the affirmative is a bad thing. So you can easily vote on the perm. But even if you don't want to vote there, let's go to the relinks. We tell you they've dropped 2 relinks. First, that investment in language ignores that our language is skewed by the academy in the first place, which means that the language we're probably trying to use in order to collapse an institution is always going to be wired to go against the institute, or wired to align with the institution in the first place, which probably means that they don't get any solvency, and their investment in language only does things to reify the academy in the first place, which means that they don't do anything. But second of all, they've dropped the relink that they if they tell you the debate is the university, which is their whole link, then their investment in the debate is probably the largest relink in existence, because they're just going to go into the next round and read this university K again, which probably means they don't deserve the ballot. And if anything, if you're voting to collapse the university, then vote against them, which means that you should probably not be voting on the K. On their floating offense, there's no they haven't read you a presumption trigger other than there's no clash. This is disproved by the fact that there is clash in this round, and that they could have had clash if they simply asked, which probably means that they don't get access to any of their solvency. At the point where we disclosed, at the point where they aren't triggering presumption, it's pretty clear that you can evaluate this round. Fairness can't be determined because empiricism skews ethics as well, which is an argument Michelle extended. But at the end of the debate, you vote AF because we're the only side that has a chance of fulfilling the role of the ballot, which is to determine whoever is most able to combat empiricism. At the point where empiricism is actually, even if you want to evaluate the root cause debate, we tell you that empiricism operates independently of the educational university institution, and they've dropped several relinks and essentially don't have links left. You have to be voting AF for a world in which we combat empiricism through successful material movement building.
Good debate.
Oh my lord. Good debate.
Okay, we're gonna go cry in a corner for
Yeah.
10 minutes and we'll be back.
Thank you, judges.
All right, we have it.
Okay, do we have the competitor?
Here.
Yep.
Yeah, we're still on computer. I'll just pass the headset around. Yeah. Okay. Wait, are the debaters here or not? Can we come on camera?
Yes. We're Ridge is here.
Okay. And yes, I can see the decision. Okay. All right. And there's MVLA. All right, y'all. Congratulations on getting all the way to Octos at TOC. That is an accomplishment. Thank you for a entertaining round and an interesting round. It is a 2-1 decision for the government. So Esha squirreled. So hand it over to them.
Hello.
Esha.
No.
No.
Oh,
Once you don't want to wear them, we can.
yeah. Let's just do
Okay.
it all.
But yeah,
Okay.
just now you've turned my music on, so that's not going to upset anybody. Okay, so now it should work.
Hello? Okay, cool. Oh yeah. This is a really hard ballot for me to make. Like I just feel like for me, the way that I end up voting negative is because I think that the PMR responses that would have led me to vote affirmative are basically either shadow extensions or basically new arguments against the theory shell, cross applications of the affirmative against the theory shell. But here's where I specifically end up voting negative. So I voted negative on the presumption trigger, and it's so annoying, and I don't want to do it. I'm so sorry, but I think that the theory shell is just conceded by the MG, except for a counter interpretation, and one counter standard doesn't have any analysis attached to it. So I don't really know what reason I have to prefer the counter interpretation. I think the block rearticulation of the theory shell as purely voting on the presumption trigger hidden in the standards is not answered by the counter interpretation of if asked either, because I think their argument is not that like you should vote on the theory shell. Like there's a world in which they ask and like your offense is solved. I don't think we're voting. I'm supposed to evaluate in terms of that. I think their argument is like in this round, we didn't ask whatever, you didn't specify whatever, and because of that, I can't evaluate your roll of ballot and thus can't evaluate whether you solve empiricism. And I think this is just not my favorite way to vote. I think there's other ways to vote, but I think those other ways to vote are messy and more interventionist than this way. I think this is the cleanest way for me to vote because there's just no ink on the sheet, and the PMR response to the presumption trigger is that this is just proven by the fact that there is clash in offense here. But I think the argument is not that there is no offense, but that I should be presuming neg, because in the end, regardless of whatever exists, the roll of the ballot not having these specifications means I can't test your AF and I can't evaluate whether your AF is solvent, which I think for me is a presumption trigger for the neg. I did think about the K proper a lot too, because I was trying to figure out like what is the cleanest route for the ballot. I think that the affirmative is winning the K, is winning empiricism coming first. I think where I struggle with this ballot specifically, and where I feel like this is not a clean ballot, is because I think the place I would end up really voting affirmative is this argument that says that empiricism is not entirely controlled by academia and exists outside of academia. However, I think that their neg has implicit offense against this because they're reading this argument that says that education specifically does not need to exist inside academia, but academia is the measure through which education is controlled and like systematized into a way in which education is co-opted. So without academia, you can't access those other forms of education, which is I think in the roll of the ballot, the sort of roll of the ballot argument that they read, and it is extended to the block. This is not cross applied to this specific argument, but I also think like the PMR argument that cross applies that says that there is floating offense and thus the presumption trigger isn't true is also like a really new cross application. And at this point, there's also like so many contradictory arguments on every sheet of the flow, like where the PMR tells me like the AF has been telling me the whole time that we can't do empirical historical analysis, and then cites historical analysis as solvency for the affirmative working in the PMR, and specifically, which is I think that is also the major takeout of the neg offense in the PMR. I don't know how I'm supposed to evaluate this, because it's not like the neg makes the argument that this is a relink into your case. I'm not evaluating it as a relink. At the same time, if you're telling me I shouldn't care about historical analysis and the only thing I can evaluate is rejecting empiricism itself, then I don't know how I'm supposed to like evaluate your historical analysis as solvency for that. And I also don't know like what empiricism means, because there's also a block argument that says that even if it's true that empiricism has historically succeeded, if they cite arguments in the PMR that says that empiricism has historically succeeded, that means that their analysis about colonialism and imperialism being like the prior question and foremost impact whatever isn't true. And I think that's not well interacted with it either. In the end, I think there's very little collapsing done by either team. I think the PMR layering is just it's confusing for me, because I think it obviously I think empiricism comes first is the thesis of the PMR, which is true, but I'm losing you on the actual argumentation here, where we're like why I should be preferring empiricism over the presumption trigger just because there's floating offense everywhere. Like I don't know if that's true, and I also don't know how to evaluate that floating offense. And I think like for me, especially when
there is a clean presumption trigger that has very little ink on it. I think the PMR answers to the presumption trigger are new because there is no MG ink on the sheet. It is the easiest place for me to vote. I'm not happy with this ballot though, so yeah.
Why? But I'm the white man. They don't want my ballot.
Oh wait, actually, I have okay, yeah, and okay, so I think that the MO needed to collapse to theory, just straight up theory, right? Like that is the sheet with no ink on it. The K is pretty. For me, these two Ks is really hard for me to evaluate. I think the perm is pretty easy, right? Like in the end, both of you are using the ballot. Both of you are looking for like are existing and operating within academia. There's a block shift to I think this argument is in the LOC. So it's not exactly a shift, but I think the rhetoric of the block shifts to say that investment into debate is good and using the debate the way it's intended to be is good, which is why being non-topical is bad. And it's not that the app is just using the debate space, but they're using the debate space in the way that that preserves it rather than killing it. This is a place of struggle for me, but in the end, I think that like the easiest way out for the neg is on theory and just going straight for 8 minutes of theory of standards weighing and layering above the K. So I wish the neg had done that. Yeah.
Okay. I will not speak. I'm also kidding. These random you want white affirmation doesn't actually bother me, y'all. Don't worry. So okay. I get Esha's resolution of the flow. That's a lot of work though, ultimately in a couple places, and I'm not frankly willing to do it. I understand the PMR. I understand the layering in the PMR. I agree that there are several arguments that are new. I also agree that the fact that the MO doesn't collapse means I don't really, and the block and the LOR doesn't really do enough, doesn't like improve the collapsing substantively for me, means I don't actually have enough ink to pull the trigger for the neg in enough places. So while I agree that coming out of the block, the neg is probably technically ahead, I do not believe that I don't understand it well enough, and I don't think do actually have enough coming out of it to overcome at least, I think, Kira's clean articulation in the PMR. Why are they doing this? We are mid RFD. Joel, can we have a few more minutes, please? Joel, can we not close the breakout room? We're in the middle of giving the kids the feedback and it's lunchtime. We're not pressed for time. Oh, Joel, you're still muted. I'm sorry.
The problem
go.
is the student forum needs to start soon and they need a room. So we need to close the breakout rooms. We will recreate them so you can hop back into one of the empty
That's
breakout
fine.
rooms.
That works. That works, Joel.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, kids, let's hop back out and then Nish and I can continue to give you the RFD.
Yes.
All right.